Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman and thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, well, so much for election day, it's more like election week. We talk with local journalists about national and local elections results.
Our community transmission rates are at drastic levels.
COVID-19 has dealt a blow to the Black community especially, and the numbers are on the rise again.
I'm Angel Ito, and tonight I'll have more on the oldest Black-owned shoe store in the country. They're based right here in Hyde Park.
No one can tell your story better than you can.
And photographer VASHON Jordan Jr. gets the last word on how the Black experience is depicted in media and who is telling those stories. So raise your hand if you spent most of this week glued to the TV and checking your phone for the latest election results. It even has a name now, doom scrolling. Though we were warned that definitive results for the presidential election could take days, if not weeks, expectations and tensions ran high. And while there still might not be a consensus, there is still plenty to talk about. Joining us now with more are Chicago Sun-Times political reporter Rachel Hinton, co-editor-in-chief of the Chicago Reader, Karen Hawkins, and WBEZ political reporter Becky Vevey. Welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So let's start with the presidential race. We've seen some states flip from red to blue, and many attribute that to the Black vote, which some might say is the closest to a monolith in this country as it gets. What is happening in these states? Rachel, can we start with you, please?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a pushback, a rebuke, maybe, especially in some districts of President Trump and his policies. I also think that, especially because of the pandemic, because of things that have been going on this year, I think that we're seeing more people come out to the polls, especially because now with the pandemic, it's easier to do so. A lot of states have made it easier to vote by mail. And so I think that we're seeing people really want to weigh in right now. And because in a lot of states that's been made easier, I think we're seeing people really take advantage of that.
Now, Karen, it's close to a monolith, but of course it is not, because at least one exit poll seems to indicate that the number of Black Americans who voted for Trump this time increased since the 2016 election. What's your reaction to those polls?
To try to go to a happy place in my head, first of all, and second of all, to give kudos to the Trump campaign for reaching out to the right demographic of Black folks, right? Folks who feel like they could be hurt by Biden's tax policies, i.e. really wealthy folks, the more conservative part of the community, people who believe this notion that being the law and order president is a real thing, folks who support his immigration stance. I do think they were successful at using celebrities particularly to reach out to those conservative parts of the Black community.
So we all know that, Chicago is a big blue spot where the rest of Illinois is mostly red. But even in Chicago, there are some very Republican precincts. So if you take maps of the vote for president, state's attorney, and the graduated income tax amendment, they're virtually the same map. Becky, what do we know about some of these precincts?
Well, we do know that historically the far northwest side of the city and the far southwest side of the city have been more conservative, Republican. This is also where a lot of Chicago police officers live.
And Becky, as you're speaking, we're looking at a map from City Bureau, that is showing us where some of these more conservative pockets of Chicago are. Go ahead, sorry.
Right, and so what we do see in those areas is, I think, Trump's message about law and order, as Karen referenced, really resonating. I think you have more conservative people, maybe more religious people who are hearing those sort of Republican messages and still voting in that direction. That also isn't, those are areas where I think the fair tax maybe didn't resonate quite as much either, because you do have a little bit better off folks who are living in those parts of the city. So I think that's what you're seeing in terms of the precincts and the turnout for President Donald Trump, and also against Kim Foxx and against the fair tax.
Okay, so speaking of Kim Foxx, locally that race was called pretty quickly in her favor. We spoke to her after her win this week, and here's a little bit of what she said.
For me, it's been doing this work while recognizing that there is an elephant in the room around race and equity and justice that we are too afraid to talk about. And having that lived experience requires me to push those conversations even at their most difficult times.
Rachel Hinton, what do you think we can expect to see from her in her next 4 years?
I think we can expect to see more reforms. I mean, Kim Foxx hasn't really shied away from trying to instill reforms, even though that they may not be popular amongst the police or law and order crowd. I do think right before this election, she said that she may, she's considering, or rather everything is on the table, which may include reversing the policy of raising the bar on shoplifting, or rather, now under her tenure, it's if you shoplift $1,000, it's a certain crime. It used to be $300. She said that she may consider going back to the $300 limit. But I don't expect her to become a law and order sort of candidate. I don't expect her to start taking on the rhetoric of her Republican rival, Pat O'Brien. I think we're going to keep seeing more of the same and keep seeing more progressive policies.
Now, the Fair Tax Amendment, it failed to pass, though it was popular in most Chicago districts. And as a result, the governor has promised some pretty deep cuts. Becky, back to you. What might that look like? What could that mean for residents of Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, I read he's going to be needing to cut up to 4%, I believe, out of the budget that was passed. And I think that for Chicago, there certainly there was some assumptions about the fair tax in the 2021 budget. I haven't heard much yet from the mayor's administration about whether or not they need to make any adjustments, or if they were kind of holding off until 2022 to anticipate new revenues from that fair tax. So we might be fine for 2021. But yeah, the fair tax was a very interesting result, and you can see oddly, or maybe not oddly, how the further away from Chicago you got, the more no votes people cast. It swung very starkly. You had, if you look at Chicago majority black wards, 82% of people said yes. You go down to downstate counties where Trump carried those counties, only 28% of people said yes. And imagine in between there, suburban Cook, Collar counties, you see those percentages decrease as you go further from Chicago.
And again, we're just looking at that map from City Bureau, and you can see, some of the purple where it failed. Some of those are precincts within the city of Chicago as well. So all of the Cook County judges up for re-election held onto their seats. The only one who came close to not being retained was Juvenile Justice Division Judge Michael Tuman, who critics they say he has a record of opposing reform that would have kept kids out of jail. So an activist confronted Mayor Lori Lightfoot about this outside of school, about her support for Tuman. Here's a little bit of what she said.
Why did you endorse Judge Tuman? He locks up 11-year-olds.
No, I'm happy to endorse Judge Tuman because he's a good judge.
How so? He advocated to lock up younger children.
You're wrong about that.
And then he denied their release when they had COVID.
You got your facts wrong.
Karen, what is this? That entire election, the fact that so many judges were able to hold onto their seats, what does that say about the system?
Well, it says that we haven't gotten the message across yet that those races matter and that there's something that you need to be educated about. I have been banging the drum for the Injustice Watch judicial kind of tool that you could use to take with you into the polls to help you decide who to retain and who not to. And I feel like those huge margins that we saw of people being retained just says to me that people either are skipping that, even though they moved it to the beginning of my ballot, or they're just saying yes, figuring like, well, how bad could this person be? They're already a judge. So I do think we need more education about how important those races are and how important the backgrounds of those people are and what impact judges have on the entire judicial system. Obviously, we pay so much attention to cops and the role they play, but judges are just as important.
Rachel, on that same topic, what does that mean, or what could it mean for the future of criminal justice in Chicago?
I would agree with Karen on that. I think at Justice Watch, I'll also bang the drum for them. They've really done a good job of trying to educate people. I think that people are becoming more educated about their judges and who's on the bench. But I think this is a fairly, not new thing, but it's still fairly new to people who aren't constantly paying attention to this thing. And so I think that more needs to be done to maybe continue to educate people about, no, this is who is on the bench. This is their record. This is what the top bar associations have said about them. Are they qualified? Are they not qualified? But I think because you see a wall of text and your ballot is very long, I think people are just like, I'll just vote yes. What that means for criminal justice in the county, I think that might mean more of the same, but I also think hopefully down the line, that might mean that, judges are maybe put on notice, or rather people begin to think that they can put judges on notice, that they're not just someone who is someone that they will never have any sort of interaction with. I think that we'll begin to see more people, or I hope we'll begin to see more people taking part in all facets of government in the county.
Yeah, perhaps we'll see more people beginning to pay attention to that part of it as well for the next ballot. My thanks to Rachel Hinton, Karen Hawkins, and Becky Vivi. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Illinois has now surpassed more than 10,000 deaths statewide from COVID-19. And as the virus once again surges in Illinois and Chicago, WTTW News is renewing our commitment to covering COVID-19 every day and every night on television and digital, bringing you the news you need to know about all aspects of the pandemic. On Thursday, Illinois' top doctor issued a dire warning ahead of the holiday travel season.
There is significant potential for harm and death. Let's be very plain. And it's not just to yourself, for the people who feel nothing could ever happen to them, but it's to other members of your family and other people that you may not even know that you could unwittingly spread the virus to.
And here with more on the COVID surge and how it's impacting Chicago's Black communities is Dr. Doriane Miller, director of the Center for Community Health and Vitality at UChicago Medicine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brandis.
So, Doctor, COVID cases in Chicago have risen more than 40% in this last week. How concerned are you about this surge and that the numbers will continue to surge?
I'm very concerned about the surge in COVID cases within the Chicago area, not just in terms of the surge of cases, but also what may follow, which will be a real strain on our hospital system in the Chicago area and indeed within the state.
So early on in the pandemic, of course, we saw that Black Chicagoans were facing the highest case numbers and deaths. What are you seeing on the ground now as cases rise?
We're seeing our hospital and also our ambulatory centers gear up for the number of patients who are coming through that may have mild symptoms and may not even think that they are infected. And so we are taking precautions internally in terms of wearing protective gear when we see patients. For patients that come through our outpatient or ambulatory center, if there's any hint that they may be infected, we actually are interviewing the patients over the phone first before going in to see them, because they may be people who are infected and may not even attribute the symptoms that they're having to a COVID-19 infection. We've done fairly well at the University of Chicago around this during the first phase of the pandemic, but I must say that with the rising cases, we need to be cautious and prepared.
We hear a lot, of course, about COVID fatigue and people getting lax with their precautions. As a contributor in this case surge, how big of a role would you say that's playing?
I think that COVID fatigue is playing a somewhat of a role in this, but it depends upon the communities. I've had some conversations with some of my community partners because I do a fair amount of community outreach and education. And actually, because COVID-19 has so disproportionately affected the Black community in Chicago, actually, I see a lot more concern about protection, particularly amongst our young people. You may remember that back in the late spring and summer, there were a number of parties that took place amongst Black youth in the city, along with messages that came from our public health officials about not holding these gatherings. But actually, I'm seeing different messages that are coming out from our young people, in that they're very concerned that if they become infected, that they may take these infections back to their loved ones who may be at risk for having more complicated infections. And so I think that taking this seriously within the African American community, that mood has shifted.
And at that time that you're speaking of, early on, when we saw the video of those parties, I think part of the concern was that people were concerned that that community was not getting the message. Do you feel like the messages that are being delivered to them now are making it, or different messages perhaps, different method of delivery?
It's not just a question of getting the message, it's a question of having had firsthand experience with having a family member to have either a complicated COVID infection or even passing away from one. It's estimated that 1 out of 3 African Americans know someone who has had COVID, and many of those people, because of some of the underlying risk factors for COVID infections, things that we talked about in the show in April, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, those types of things that make you more likely to have a complicated infection continue to exist. And so again, people have had not just personal experience, but sometimes we hear in the communities, they'll say, Rona is real. This is not something to be played with. This is something that we need to take seriously.
Do you believe the city and the state have done enough to ensure adequate access to testing and care?
I think that we're doing a fairly good job in terms of adequate testing. Certainly in the care community, we're doing a lot more. However, the question of the timeliness of the return of results is very important. And I say that for this reason. When we think about someone getting tested for COVID and having results that are delayed, and thinking about delays of 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days, the people who are infected are still circulating amongst the general population, and they may be asymptomatic, not having any symptoms of COVID, but they have the opportunity to spread to other people who are at higher risk for having complicated infections. And so it's not just a question of testing, but it's a question of the timely return of results, and also being able to do appropriate tracing of people who you may have contacted so that they can be informed and that people can isolate themselves.
And in the little bit of time that we've got left, Dr. Miller, a survey by the Associated Press and University of Chicago showed that just 22% of Black respondents would receive the vaccine when it's available. What do public health officials need to do to reach that community and convince them that if they believe they have a safe vaccine, they should consider it?
Working with trusted members of the community, cultural translators, if you will, in order to show that there is trust in the distribution of the vaccine and that it's something that is not only important, but could be life-saving for people in the Black community. If given the higher rates of complicated infections amongst African Americans, it's something that my patients and the people who are my friends and family members really should be demanding, as opposed to seeing a little less than 1 out of 4 people who are saying that they'll actually take the vaccine.
Okay, Dr. DORIANE Miller, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And up next, a shoe store with a unique history. But first, a pair of shuts and what's on tap this week.
Brandis, we've got a lot planned on Chicago tonight this week. A look at the mounting legal challenges in the race for president. And local efforts to stem COVID-19 as Illinois deaths top 10,000. That's this week at 7 here on 11.
A shoe store on the city's south side is celebrating 50 years as the only independent Black-owned shoe retailer in the country. Arts correspondent Angel Ito joins us now in the studio to share how their shoes are a step ahead. Hey, Angel.
Hey, Brandis. So a trip to Wesley's shoe store is unlike any shopping experience I've ever had. Now, despite the pandemic limiting interactions, customers still refer to it as their home away from home.
It's the family atmosphere at Wesley's Shoe Corral that customers say has kept it around for the last 50 years.
When you shop with merchants who look like you and understand your background, it's like being with a family.
From dress shoes to running shoes to dance shoes, Wesley's specializes in the art of the shoe.
Everybody likes shoes. Shoes are very cultural for us, I would say. Jordans, Nike, all of that stuff, Adidas. But Bruce brings something else to the table. Like, you can get all those things here if you ask for them, if you want them, but there's so many other options.
Started by Alvin J. Wesley in 1970, the only Black independent shoe retailer in the U.S. is now run by his son, Bruce.
Why do you believe that Wesley stands out in comparison to other shoe stores? What are you going to get here that you won't get anywhere else?
I mean, we want people to always remember, and we want the new generation to experience the sit and fit process. Shoes can still look cute, cool, but be comfortable as well. We really pride ourselves in finding the best for the community.
Their sit and fit process has even waited on the likes of former Senator Carol Moseley Braun and the Obama family. It was recently ranked as the #1 shoe retailer in Illinois and 13th in the country. Customers agree as they share what's kept them coming back for generations.
And I started buying shoes for my daughter. I have 2 kids with my daughter, and she was taking ballet, so I stopped over at Bruce Wesley Shoe Corral and bought my ballet shoes for her, and she made it work, so much so that she became an actress. And a dancer.
Not only are we supporting local small business, family-owned business, but the prices are exactly the same as if I had to go all the way downtown. And I don't want to have to go all the way downtown, leave my neighborhood just to buy a pair of shoes.
These are high quality shoes. This is not little Milwaukee. These are shoes from all over the world, very high quality, very high standards here.
Especially during this time, I mean, Black people are always having like adversities and things, and just being able to lift up a store, it's just very important to give back to your community and still build your community up at the same time. So Wesley's is like the perfect store to do that.
Now, customers tell me it is their professionalism and attention to detail that has kept them coming back for decades. Now, despite being in a pandemic, Wesley says they are still safely offering their sit and fit service.
Good old sit and fit. So, you know, I understand this is obviously a store dedicated to serving the community. Even you used to shop there back in the day?
Yes, that's right. Well, okay, my grandmother used to shop there. She used to get all of our family shoes from there. So when I was visiting, they pulled our name up in the system and found that I bought dance shoes back in 2003.
Oh, fun fact. Dance shoes that you can still wear, I'm
Yes.
sure. Angelito, good to see you in studio. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
The protests that swept across Chicago this summer had plenty of cameras on them. But who was behind the camera? Photographer VASHON Jordan Jr. gives us the last word on the lens of history.
Black joy and the Black experience is magical. That does not change. What changes is who is presenting you images of Black people and our effortless beauty. My name is VASHON Jordan Jr., and I'm a photographer and the author of Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution, a photo book showcasing over 100 photos from more than 35 different demonstrations and moments that shaped the summer of 2020 here in Chicago. I believe that it is important to show the nuances of every story and present a narrative that represents the overall feelings and mood, not just of whoever is the loudest. In news media, given that the cycle changes so fast, it's very easy to overlook those small details and get a sense of what other people feel, unless you belong to that community. Then it becomes automatic. Having more photographers and media makers covering the communities and people they represent is an automatic win, because no one can tell your story better than you can. When people look back on the summer of 2020 and discuss what happened and who did what, I want young people to see themselves represented in a positive light. And this is not a constructed or staged depiction. The bottom line is, Black joy is revolutionary. And with this book, I want that to be cemented in history. I want those young people to be proud of the work that young people of this time put in, and know that it wasn't all suffering, despair, and sadness. We should see ourselves in positive lights too. Black people living our lives in peace and harmony is something we do not see broadcasted far enough, mainly because we're not in charge of the history books, which of course are not top of mind in the moment. So I'm challenging that. Because not only does representation matter, but who is depicting your representation matters even more. When you look at my photos from the Chicago protests of 2020, know that these are more than just pictures I took, but they are visuals of an experience that I shared with every person right in and right outside of the frame. I want you to see people of all backgrounds and identities coming together in solidarity, in light, in love, and embarking on a joyful revolution.
The last word there from VASHON Jordan Jr. And that is our show for this Sunday night. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And join Paris Schutz and me tomorrow at 7 on Chicago Tonight. And we leave you tonight with some more photos from photographer VASHON Jordan Jr.'s book, Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud of their attorneys selected for the 2020 Illinois Super Lawyers List.